Today we're going to put that TV on that wall. And I'm just going to give you some tips if you've never hung a TV before or used a TV mount. Some things that you're going to want to think about before you start drilling a whole lot of holes. Number one thing is make sure you know where you want it, okay? If this is where you want it, once you start drilling holes, especially for some of these larger mounts, you're going to have some holes in the wall that you're going to have to repair. And if there's anything under the TV, we're going to want to make sure that we figure out where the TV hangs on the mount. So is it going to be center line? Is the TV going to hang lower or higher? Because if I mount this center line and somehow the TV's offset, I could possibly hit the bottom. So understand how far the TV needs to be above this, how far the mount needs to be above it, and a lot of the instructions will tell you that. So you can't just kind of slam a mount up here. You need to measure the size of your TV, figure out where exactly on the mount it measures. Next, we got to find these studs. Thankfully, you're looking at the best stud finder in the game. Who needs one of those electric stud finders? You know there's one stud right there, right? Probably one right there. So we found this one, and probably 16 inches on center. So we'll just work off of that, and we're gonna want at least one stud for our TV holder. If you have an electronic one, you can use an electronic one, but if you got a good ear, which I don't anymore, but see how that's solid? Solid, okay? You can just hear the difference in tone. I hope I'm explaining this properly. This is a good example. Because this mount can hold several different TVs, the very center of the mount isn't necessarily going to be perfectly center on my TV. So that 14.5 inches we talked about isn't right. So I need to make sure that when I attach this TV to the mount, how far down is it going to go? How much clearance am I going to have? So you may have to put some work in with your mount to make sure, especially if you're going to mount it above something, to make sure you have enough clearance. If you put the mount here, how far down is your TV going to hang? And usually the instructions on the mount will do that. So just don't go willy-nilly throw it up and think that it's going to fit because you measured half length of your TV. You really need to understand how that TV is going to fit on your mount. And for some of these bigger TVs, it is different. So make sure you spend some time understanding it. There you go, there's your stud finder, but thankfully I already found one 16 inches on center. That's what that means. If you find one stud 16 inches on center one way, 16 inches on center the next way. For the heavier TVs, and some of these mounts are really heavy, you're going to want to get some screws into a stud. 2 screws should be enough if it's in the center, but if you can get one on each side, that's going to be a lot better. Alright, so what I did is I measured for the center, and then you can use, if you got one of these, put some marks right there, right? So now I know the center. Just thankfully, the center lands on a stud. So, like I said, they're going to overdo it with screws. You mount at your own expense. 2 good screws into a stud is going to hold any TV. If you're using drywall anchors, I would say use the zinc ones, and you should be fine. But 2 of these, look at these things. 2 of these bad boys into a stud will hold you, me, and somebody else. It'd definitely hold one of these new TVs. Alright, you're definitely going to need some tools. You're going to need to pre-drill those holes for this. You're going to need a ratchet. Most of these newer TV mounts are going to come with something like that. So before you just go get started, you're going to want to make sure you have the proper tools. Alright, so now we found our center line, and we're going to get busy. Make sure the center of your TV mount is also where the center of the TV is. Remember how we talked about the up and down? Side to side can sometimes be off. It just so happens mine, the center of the mount is where the center of the TV is going to be, and that's probably going to be on almost 100% of them. That's going to be the case. Now the up and down, it's always going to depend on what size TV you have. Another thing I like to do is I like to 100%, and you're saying, well, you poked all these holes in your wall. They're all going to be covered up, and the big hole that we're about to poke in here, look, you're going to have to repair this when you take it down, so don't get all bent out of shape. But I want to know exactly where when you're putting a lag bolt like this in, you don't want to be on the side of this stud, okay? Because it's not going to grab right. You want to make sure you know exactly where the center is. And a lot of these stud finders, they will tell you right where the center's at. So you may not have to poke holes on either side, but I wanted to make sure I knew exactly where the center was at, okay? So that's where our center's at. We're going to pre-drill that. Obviously, when we use a drill bit, we're going to be about half the size. We want a drill bit about half the size of the slag bolt, okay? So if you drill it, obviously if you drill it the same size, it's not going to hold very well. Now, I had an issue. Center line for mine, guess what? I had no mounting holes for mine. So I had to make my own. As you can see, I made my own. And then I will use zinc drywall anchors to mount my four corners. You should be able to get at least 2 lag bolts in no matter what. It just so happened mine's almost perfectly centered, and this thing wasn't long enough to reach out to another stud, so it wasn't 16 inches from the center. And for some reason, this, engineers, they went to college. I didn't go to college. So there you go. Obviously you're gonna hold your mount up there with level and draw your little circles where you can go. And then to make sure everything stayed level, go ahead and take your level, because now you can hold your level much easier than you could hold that whole mount and a level. And then go back through, and then you can see where I drew lines. So I know I'm level all the way across. So, okay. And we're getting there. We're getting there. You're going to want to take your time with this TV mount, right? You don't want people coming into your house saying, yeah, TV's crooked, Go ahead and pre-drill these holes with a really small one so that you know those anchors are going to go exactly where you want them, okay? All right, as you can see, we got anchored down right here. These are the 2 holes we drilled so that we could hit our stud. She's on there. That thing ain't going nowhere. Now this mount does have an adjustment where you can raise the TV or lower it. So I may change this once I hang it up. So I could lower the TV a little bit lower, raise it up a little bit. This thing should be perfectly centered, and then we can work on the up and down. Got the brackets hanging out from underneath the TV, so you gotta decide if you're gonna want that or not. So that's gonna limit how far down or you can bring your TV. So something you're gonna have to think about when you're hanging your TV. All right, so we got our last piece on. Now with everything that I've been telling you, it just so happens this mount has adjustments for everything. So anything you mess up, you can fix. If you need to move it side to side, you can see that I could just move the TV farther to the one side. So I wouldn't need to center this on whatever the position I wanted. I could just put it to one side or the other, and then I could shift the TV one side or the other. I don't necessarily have to get it level perfectly, because I have this little adjustment right here that will allow me to level where I hang the TV. So you got all those options. I guess the number one thing, you got to look at your mount and make sure what adjustments it's going to have for you. The number one thing is going to be how high, based on where you're going to put those. Like I said, I'm limited because the lower I go, I really only got 4 holes that I can go. So if I move it this way to try to drop my TV, I'm going to see these bars underneath my TV, as I showed you before. So take time to figure out what kind of mount you got and where you want your TV. This was a little bit more expensive mount, so it does have a lot of options. The mount you have may not have all the different options and features that this one has. So, and it comes with spacers. That's why you don't have this piece up against your TV like that, we're good to go. We're going to lock it in place and give you the final shots, see how we did. All right, with all the screw ups and mess ups, there's the finished product. Looking good. Again, this one has all the adjustments, so I could change it to the left, to the right, tilt it to the left, tilt it to the right to level it. So even if my mount is all screwed up, I can fix it. I didn't even spend any time to do that. I just kind of hung everything up. Just take time, know what mount you got, and just take your time to, if you center everything to start with, then you're not going to have any issues. The main thing, you got to figure out how your mount works for up and down. Up and down is going to be the most important thing, because a lot of them are going to have a little bit of side-to-side adjustment, but the up and down adjustment is going to be tough. It's only going to have so much room, especially depending on how big your TV is and what size mount you bought. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe.